this guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
I would like to welcome the new officials who are joining officials from IRCC at the table. With the Canadian Border Services Agency, we have Ted Gallivan, Executive Vice President. With Canadian Security Intelligence Agency, we have Vanessa Lloyd, Interim Director. And from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, we have Michelle Duham, Commissioner. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. So we'll start straight away with questions. This panel has no opening statements, so we'll go first to Madame Ms. Dancho. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the officials for being with us today on this very important topic. First, immigration. On the 2018 requirement or removal of the requirement for the police certificate, clearance certificates from country of origin, Pakistan was one of those. Is there consideration being given amongst the department to reinstate the requirement, not the option, but that it was required for Pakistan and others that may have been impacted by the 2018 change? Is that being considered in the department?
So thank you for the question, Chair. And I think the Minister pointed out that we are going to do a full evaluation of what transpired, and based on all of those information received, what can we do better, and if there are things which we need to do differently, we will consider that.
Okay, I appreciate that you can't. Okay, thank you very much. But can you confirm for me that, I think the Minister did, but just to confirm again, permanent residents require that police certificate clearance from countries like Pakistan, but student visas do not, correct?
Can I please turn to Aisha on that one to be very doubly sure about that?
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So permanent residents are asked for police certificates. There's a difference in the threat and the risk level for temporary residents where they're coming for a temporary purpose. So there's different requirements for those coming for a temporary stay versus a permanent stay. Permanent residents would require that have different requirements, more enhanced, in fact, because of the rights that would be provided to them and their ability to stay in Canada.
I appreciate that you described that certificate clearance as more enhanced screening measure. That's my understanding. You used the words more enhanced. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. So I should correct myself. It's not necessarily more enhanced. It's a different, perhaps, different expectations for an officer, because now they are assessing a different type of resident. So when they're assessing somebody who's coming here for a temporary stay, they will request all of the information and documents they need for that duration of stay. When we have a permanent resident or perhaps a citizen, they will ask for the appropriate documentation that would satisfy them based on the fact that they would have different rights in Canada.
I would ask in your review that you, as the official opposition critic for public safety, I'd ask that you do strongly reconsider re-implementing or putting in additional, whatever measures we can possibly put in place to ensure there's extra screening. I do ask that you please do so, as I'm sure you are. I do want to ask the RCMP and a few questions as well. My understanding is you got your hands on the video, the alleged video from 2015 of this, the ISIS video of that individual being dismembered. What was your next course of action? Was it to inform the RCM? Was it to inform RCC, or was it to inform CSIS? Or who found out first and told whom? Just trying to establish in brief, in 1 minute, if you could tell me.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my recollection is the RCMP did not have that video initially.
At no time?
No time.
That's interesting.
When it was shared, when it was known, when it became
known. And CBSA?
Copy of the video, further to media reports, is a copy we took in the context of lessons learned, opportunities to improve, go forward.
You never had it until, you didn't know about it until media reports. Neither
Correct.
CBSA or the RCMP were aware. Was CSIS aware? I guess you can't speak for CSIS. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. You can, of course you can. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. I believe in our last session, we spoke about the requirements to be careful about what was shared between the agencies in the context of the ongoing investigation. And what I would point the honourable member to is in the chronology, the reference that as soon as CSIS became aware of threat information, which was in June of 2024, that we began to take action to mitigate the threat.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Chair, with my remaining 30 seconds, I'm going to give it to MP Shipley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dancho, for this time. Chair, I would like to be moving the motion that I put on notice the other day, please, and in regards to lengthening this study. I just wanted to make this a very short preamble, and hopefully we can get back to...
I'm sorry, which motion? You did several motions, I believe.
Well, I can read it out. I have it here. Given that you have it, Clerk? Given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who was preparing to carry out a massacre... Who was that? Who was preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expanded its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and of the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship application by no less than 8 meetings to further examine how alleged ISIS terrorists are able to enter and reside in Canada, that the Minister of Public Safety and his officials be invited to reappear for no less than 2 hours, that IRCC officials, CBSA officials, RCMP officials, and CSIS officials be invited to reappear before the committee, and that no more than one minister, agency, or department testify at a time. And I'll speak very briefly to this, as I was saying, Chair, I really do want to get back to our study at hand. Obviously, I'm looking for more time. We're finding out a lot of information here, but there's a lot of information yet to come out. And one of the interesting things that the Minister just in the last hour mentioned was, and I'll quote him, we will be findings in a few weeks of their study. That would be great to be able to bring up in this study that we're doing here. So that's one of the other reasons we want to lengthen this. So therefore, I hope all of our committee members can agree to this. I'm not going to go on long about this. Hopefully we can agree that this is an important study. Canadians need this. There's some fears out there right now. We need to make sure there's going to be some corrections coming, and I'll leave that on the floor, and hopefully this passes.
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. We go now to Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move an amendment to this, and I'll just read my entire motion, which begins as Mr. Shipley has put it on the record, but given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who was preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expanded its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship to include questions around this more recent arrests in its meetings. And then I'd like to speak to my amendment.
So is your amendment ending the paragraph there?
It ends it. The difference is that it ends it after permanent residence and citizenship application and include questions around its more recent arrests in its meetings.
Okay. So the remaining text
is deleted.
Is deleted, okay. So we are on the amendment now?
Sorry, I'd like to speak to my amendment.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Thank you. I was just making sure everyone was caught up.
So Ms. Dancho, Mr. McGregor, and then...
So the rationale, Mr. Chair, is the fact that throughout this meeting, in the context of the original motion, the minister has been asked questions about this third alleged terror plot. He answered those questions. There were 2 rounds by the Conservatives. All parties had a chance to ask on that. There was no objections raised by us, although it was outside technically of the scope of the meeting. But these are important questions that Canadians want answers to. We have all of the agencies listed in the original motion here now, and had the member not interrupted the meeting, they would have had the opportunity to ask those very questions. We have absolutely no issue of expanding the scope, but all of those questions can be posed to the individuals that have been listed and the responsible agencies. So I would hope that there is support around the table for this amendment to just ensure that the scope is expanded. However, the Conservatives, if they want to, could just take over the committee and not allow for us to actually conduct our business and ensure that all parties have the opportunity to ask appropriate questions. If they just want to filibuster the rest of the meeting, that's going to be on them, but we are certainly supportive of expanding the scope as we already have in the previous panel. Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'll ask for a recorded vote on my amendment.
Some of my concerns are that, number one, officials are operating. They can't tell us everything about these cases. There's also, they don't want to impede the prosecution's ability in the court case. And we are also awaiting an interim report. So with all those factors in mind, I think we've come to an agreement, and I'll also cede my time so we can progress to the next speakers.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Ms. Stancho, I believe you're next.
First of all, I would say that this amendment by Ms. O'Connell does change the scope of the motion that we put forward, and so my understanding is that it's not admissible then. Like if you're changing the scope of the amendment or the scope of the motion with an amendment, it doesn't work. It's just not how this works, is my understanding. It just changed. So I just want to point that out. I'm not going to stick to it, but the amendment fundamentally changes what we were asking for, and my understanding that's not appropriate for amendments. But we'll leave it there, but just if the next time there is an amendment to a motion, if we can just make sure that that is being followed. But we do have an alternative proposal, but I don't believe I can make an amendment to an amendment. Is that correct?
You can make an amendment.
Right. Oh, you are correct. Thank you very much to both of you for confirming that. It's been about a year, so I'm a little rusty. But I would like to propose, I suppose, a sub-amendment, but first I'll just discuss it and then I'll move the sub-amendment. So recognizing that we have had officials' time come, and we very much appreciate that. And the minister has made quite clear, and Minister LeBlanc alluded to this as well, of course, and it's been public, that there's ongoing investigations, both in immigration, and I know CSIS and the RCMP and CBSA are also involved in that. And the minister said today that he made it sound in quite short order, a number of weeks, I believe was the quote, that that would be concluded, alluding to several times that we may have answers by then. So I appreciate that there's an investigation and Canadians expect that. So to give that a little bit of time, I think what we would propose is, since we've already agreed as a committee to have 3 additional meetings outside this current one, so 3 extra was already agreed to, rather than ask for more, we would amend the original motion, or this one, whatever works best, to say that both the Minister of Public Safety and the Minister of Immigration would come respectively 2 hours each, plus officials. So that's what would be included in those remaining 3 meetings. But the ministers each would come for 2 hours themselves, plus officials. And that way we can ask them response questions, or ask them questions in response to the investigation, because it is a bit like we're hitting a wall, and I think Canadians, the Jewish community, others deserve answers on this, and we've been hitting that, it's under investigation wall. So would like to give the minister the opportunity to respond once he can tell us more about the findings, and the Minister of Public Safety, I do believe, I'm sure he would agree to it, to come back and answer once he has more information as well. So our proposal is that. So I could amend this motion, or I could amend the original one, whatever you think would be better.
Well, let me understand. So the motion is amended by Mr. Connell.
So I could put a sub-amendment in it.
What I understand is you would like to add to that.
I could move a sub-amendment, is what I'm asking. I just want to make sure that that's what you'd prefer logistically. Yeah.
So you want to add to that amendment as one option, that we invite the both ministers individually to appear for 2 hours each in the remaining
3 meetings.
In the remaining 3 meetings.
Once we have
more information. So that would,
and I would include in that in a couple weeks. So if months go by, just in the spirit of this, if months go by and well, it's taking a long time, and I'm sure it may, but again, he said weeks, and I'd like us to stick to that. So
we can. That's all kind of.
So I don't want it to be April 2025, and we still haven't heard a thing. Canadians deserve answers now.
But you can get back at us. Hold our feet to the fire on that. Absolutely.
All right.
So.
The sub-amendment actually is then, because it's a rambling of talking and moving. So is the sub-amendment that in the remaining 3 meetings be the ministers for 2 hours each when the reports or when the findings are completed?
That's my understanding. Is that, Ms.
Well, I'd
Nanch?
like to know before we vote on
Yeah,
anything.
well, she actually hasn't formally moved the motion, so
I will
is that what we understand correctly?
Please repeat.
So in the remaining 3 meetings of the current study, you are proposing to amend Ms. O'Connell's motion or amendment to invite each of the 2 ministers to appear for 2 hours each,
Plus officials.
plus officials,
For a total of 3 meetings.
for a total of 3 meetings. So there will be one other meeting that, so one minister for one meeting, one minister for another meeting,
And officials.
and officials.
Correct.
Oh, and we have Goodale, yes.
No, that's not what they said. Sorry. This is my motion, if there's going to be a sub-amendment, we should have a sub-amendment moved and then speak to it. But the sub-amendment, as I've heard it just now, is 3 more meetings with each minister and officials after the reports are completed.
Right. So I'll let you move the motion, and I should advise the committee that we do have Ralph Goodale confirmed for next week.
Perfect.
So that would take up a 3rd meeting, so,
Okay.
for 1 hour for next week, right? Okay. If you'd like to move your sub-amendment, we'll get things squared away and...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move it momentarily. Just recall when I was on this committee last, we were able to work together despite not agreeing on a lot. We were able to get a lot of work done. So in effort to do that, I would like to move a sub-amendment to Ms. O'Connell. And again, given that we didn't have notice of the sub-amendment, do the best I can to make it make sense. So I'll just read hers and then I'll give it my best shot. So given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who is preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expand its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and of the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship application, includes questions around this more recent arrest in its meeting, and invite both the Minister of Public Safety and the Minister of Immigration to return for 2 hours respectively with officials once the investigative findings have progressed, we'll say. I think would maybe be the best open-ended word, sir. Thank you.
Is that clear to everybody?
Yes, Chair, that's not what's on the floor, with all due respect. There's a sub-amendment moved that we must be dealing with, and to then propose other new versions of it is up to the committee to decide, and I would actually like to get back to the witnesses at hand. We've prepared for this. So to suggest if you want to hold a subcommittee meeting to discuss the planning, we can do so. However, that's not appropriate now when we have a sub-amendment, an amendment, and an amendment.
Right, so the discussion I'm having is really not to do with the amendments.
Right,
the amendments are in process.
But then let us go back to questioning.
Once the sub-amendment is distributed,
Then we should recess.
We'll have a discussion
We should recess.
on it, and we will vote on it.
Then we should pause until we have the wording. Very sooner was not said on the record, and you can't move a sub-amendment to an amendment, so we'd have to vote on the main motion and then, vote on the sub-amendment.
So you can't move an amendment
Either
to a
way, I'm going to get
sub-amendment.
to it.
Right, but what I'm saying is you can't, what was said on the record that we were just getting translated during the break, additional language was attempted to be added that was not said on the record. So that can't be included on what we're voting for now. If at the conclusion of those votes, someone wants to move that further,
Okay,
then they
I
can do so,
think
but that's not
a
on
fair
the
point.
record.
I'll take that point. Ms. Stancho.
I agree that it's a fair point. So we can either vote on what was said, and I know that, Mr. Clerk, you had typed that up, and then I will propose that either way. So we could do it quick or we do it slow. So and I know, I believe some of the other parties are in agreement with the 28 days, just to ensure some accountability. So we can do it whichever way you'd like. We could either do UC and allow me to just make that edit, or I can try to do it after. But either way, it's going to take longer the second way, so I'm game for either.
Okay, so are we clear what the original sub-amendment is without this other additional text? Are we clear? Are we ready to vote on that sub-amendment? Okay.
Sorry, this one that's been sent around, or what I said?
what you said.
Okay, well then I'm going to have to speak after then. So I'm on the
Okay.
speaking list for after.
All right. So are there no more speakers on the sub-amendment, as was said? None? So let's call a vote on the sub-amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we're back to the amendment as sub-amended. And Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, sir. I would like to move just a very brief, quick sub-amendment to what we just passed, or amendment, pardon me. Or I suppose it is a sub-amendment still. So a sub-amendment to what we just passed to Ms. O'Connell's amendment. I think I'm getting confused with how many amendments we're working on, but I think you know what I mean. Ultimately, I would just say that at what we just passed, I would add the end as follows and also say it in French, or within 28 days of the adoption of this motion, whichever is sooner. I believe that's in order from what I said, adding this at the end, just to be clear.
Second sub-amendment, are we clear on that?
Yes, and the purpose is, Mr. Chair, just to ensure some accountability on this, that
Right.
just to be clear of what I'm putting forward, we've agreed that we'll bring the ministers back each for 2 hours, and a few other things there in the original, what we just passed, but we're just putting some accountability on it. Either we hear from the ministers from some investigation, or in 28 days he comes back, they both come back and talk to us. So it's just to be clear.
But also to be clear, we can't compel the ministers to show up on a particular
Well, we
schedule,
can
right?
politely ask.
We will always politely ask.
Thank you, sir.
So is there any further discussion on Ms. Dancho's second sub-amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the second sub-amendment? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we're to the amendment as doubly sub-amended. Is there any discussion on the amendment as amended? Yeah. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so now we go back to the motion itself as.
No, we did
That
the
was the
sub-amendment, the
amendment.
amendment, and
That was
the
your
motion
amendment as amended.
Okay.
So we now go back to the original motion as amended. Any discussion? No? I'm hoping no. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're next. Okay, go ahead. Ms. Demoff, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just before I get to my questions with the witnesses, I just wanted to read a notice of motion that I submitted, and when I'm finished, I'm going to ask for unanimous consent to deal with it today. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082, and given recent charges by the United States Department of Justice against RT, the Russian state media broadcaster, in a scheme to funnel $10 million to a media organization in North America, and that Canadian companies and individuals have been found to be connected to this Russian propaganda effort, the committee invite the following witnesses to testify for no less than 2 hours on their participation in the Russian-backed interference and far-right disinformation campaigns intended to manipulate the Canadian public. A. Lauren Chen, B. Liam Donovan, C. Lauren Southern. The committee also invite concerned civil society representatives and disinformation experts to further examine the risks of this concerning activity. 1. Marcus Kolga, journalist. 2. Aaron Schull, Managing Director at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. 3. Wesley Wark, Senior Fellow at Centre for International Governance Intervention. Stephanie Carvin, Professor at Carleton University. 5. Thomas Junot, Professor at the University of Ottawa. 6. Shelley Bruce, former Chief of the Communications Security Establishment. 7. Richard Fadden, former Director of CSIS. 8. Guillaume Sirot, representative of the Russian-Canadian Democratic Alliance. 9. Mark Power, representative of the Russian-Canadian Democratic Alliance. And 10. Alexandra Chisiz, president of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress, that the committee report its findings to the House and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. Chair, this was submitted to the clerk, but it hasn't been 48 hours, so I wonder if I could have unanimous consent to deal with this now.
Yes.
Do we have unanimous consent to deal with this motion at this time?
Yes.
Yes? Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak to the motion if I could.
I'm taking that we have unanimous consent to move the motion, so.
Oh, okay.
So moved.
So I will move the motion then, Chair.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm just checking my time.
Rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Call to order, Chair.
This is going to take up the rest of our meeting. I wonder if we can release the witnesses at this point. Right? Thank you to all you witnesses for joining us. I know it's a fun place to be in an afternoon, and we will invite you back, I'm pretty sure. So thank you all.
And we have 10 minutes left.
10 minutes? Okay. So we have 10 minutes available for this at this point. So I'm sorry, Mr. Moff, I cut you off, I think.
How much time have I got left, Chair?
It's not limited.
Well,
okay.
Thank you.
So,
yes, yeah.
thank you, Chair. And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to speak to this. Russia is known to use right-wing commentators in various countries, particularly in the West, to disseminate disinformation as a part of its broader influence operations. These commentators, often with large followings and credibility among right-wing conservative audience, are used as conduits for spreading pro-Russian narratives or divisive content and applying issues like nationalism, anti-immigrant sentiment, skepticism of mainstream media, and distrust of democratic institutions. Russia seeks to destabilize its adversaries from within and create chaos. This strategy involves seeding disinformation or half-truths that influencers repeat through social media and alt-news platforms. This tactic helps Russia achieve its geopolitical objectives by fostering division, polarization, and undermining confidence in the democratic process. I know I've had concerns about this issue for quite some time and was quite upset when I saw the charges that were laid by the United States on this. You know, it's something that I think all of us need to be looking at, and I'm hoping that we can vote to adopt this motion today. I know we don't have a lot of time left, Chair, so I may finish there so that we can adopt the motion.
Thank you. We'll go now to Mr. Lloyd.
Oh, I'd like to pass my time on.
Ms. Dancho, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the motion, Ms. Damoff. I do appreciate the witnesses on here. There's some excellent witnesses on here, well selected. What I would say is it's a bit unusual to include a limited list of witnesses, so I would just appreciate if all parties had the opportunity. I know Mr. Lloyd, who is it that you mentioned? We've had him here before. Christian Lupark, we've had him here before. I don't know if the Bloc or the NDP would also like to add witnesses, but just to provide everyone an opportunity to ensure we have a robust list would be great, but otherwise I see no problems, other than it just wasn't mentioned how many meetings. Is that just open-ended, or?
It was intended to be open-ended.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm not a member of the committee, but I find this very fascinating. What I would suggest is perhaps, there be some time given so that all parties can contribute witnesses, and then maybe the clerk and yourself could come up with, contact to see who is actually interested in coming to speak, at this upcoming study, and then perhaps then the amount of meetings would then take shape, and then you could maybe present it back to the committee.
So the motion is moved as it is. So perhaps an amendment can be made. Mrs. O'Connell. Mr. McGregor.
On the speaking list, I have a suggestion to offer, but you're right, you're on the speaking list. Chair, can you add
Thank you, Chair. No problems with the motion. There are some people I'd like to add. So, probably I'd seek a very slight amendment that, for the list that it includes but is not limited to, because I would like to see, people like Rachel Curran, who is head of public policy at Meta, Steve DeIyer, Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs for TikTok Canada, Lindsay Doyle, Head of Government Affairs and Policy at YouTube. these are the platforms where a lot of these people have their content on. We know from previous studies at this committee that a lot of these big social media giants are not even addressing their own terms of service. So I'd like to see those folks included. Now, I'm fine with having them listed here, or to give everyone a chance to present their own witnesses, maybe we just include language, includes this list but is not limited to. I'm fine either way.
Would you like to make that amendment? Propose that amendment?
I will include the amendment that, just a very slight amendment in advance of the list of 10 people there, that includes these people but is not limited to them.
Okay. Any discussion on Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment or amendment? None? All in favor of Mr. McGregor's amendment? Opposed? Carried. Okay. We're back to the motion as amended, and we have Ms. Dancho? No? We have Ms. O'Connell.
I'm fine with that amendment now.
Okay. Mr. Albas.
So, again, I'm not the one that's probably going to do this study, but would it be, Mr. Chair, that you would then work with the clerk to get committee witnesses, and it would be helpful for all parties to know when they need to submit by, and then perhaps the clerk you can maybe inform the committee how many meetings you think it'll take based on once people have been contacted.
That's generally the way we work anyway, but it's not part of the amendment. It's not part of the motion. Ms. Dancho, please go ahead.
Just since I'm stepping back into it, just as an aside, is the expectation that this happens immediately? Then when do we get our witnesses? And just Mr. Albas's point, and are we interrupting any studies that may have been ongoing before? I'm actually not certain. I've heard different things. So are we doing this now, or are we finishing other things first?
Well, that's really up to the committee to decide.
Okay.
So we have, next week is kind of scheduled. The following week is kind of open. So I would suggest that maybe amendment that the parties provide a witness list, additional witnesses by Wednesday next week, so that we have a chance to schedule them.
It's not very many days. That's 4 days.
To determine timing, but the motion stands, and with that amendment, it allows for additional witnesses, and it's always done in relation to the parties, so that's kind of a given.
So we could, instead of dealing with the auto report on Tuesday, we could have a subcommittee meeting, I suppose. But okay, so how about this? We vote on the motion as it currently stands, and I'll schedule a subcommittee meeting for the second hour next Thursday, and we'll move on from there. Okay? That's good? All right, so any further discussion?
We need to vote on the motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion as amended? No? Recorded vote? Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Ms. O'Connell.
Yes.
Ms. Damoff.
Yes.
Mr. Gay.
In favor?
Ms. Zaid.
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos.
Yes.
Ms. Dancho.
Yes.
Mr. Albas.
Yes.
Mr. Shipley.
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd.
Yes.
Madame Michaud.
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor.
Yes.
Yes pour 10 contre. Nobody.
That is carried. Motion to adjourn is moved. All in favor? Carried.